Okay guys, we're going to be starting shortly, so just give it a minute, see if anybody else turns up. Okay, I think we're all more or less here then. So let's go through and check out what's going on with this question paper today. So we're going to start off with, if you all grab your question papers, you picked them up from lesson today, so you need those to do this. If you haven't got it, you can download it from Show My Homework. So, first things first, question 1 asks to convert the hexadecimal number 3e into a decimal number. You must show your working. Well, if you've watched the other video we did on converting hex into binary, we can now go from hex to binary and then into a decimal value, or like a real value. So in order to do this, all we need to do is we take the hex value, so 3e, and we split it into 2. Showing your working is important for this because that's how you're going to get the 2 marks. And then what we do is we number 1, 2, 4, 8 up to 8 in binary underneath each one. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 1, 2, 4, 8. And then all we need to do is work out the binary for 3 and then work out the binary for e. So the binary for 3 is 0, 0, 1, 1. And then the binary for E, if you remember your hex charts, once you get to, so it goes 9 and 9, when we get to 10, we change that for A, 11 is B, 12 is C, 13 is D, and 14 is E. So, and obviously it goes up to 15, so 15 is F. So we know that this value is actually worth 14. So in order to get 14, we turn 8 on, we turn the 4 on, the 2 on, and this is off. So the binary value of this is 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0. So now we need to get the decimal value of it. So this is, now we need to label this binary like we would do a normal piece of binary. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 1, 2, 8. So if we add these up, 32, so all of the on circuits, so 32 is on, 16 is on, 8 is on, 4 and 2. I just need to add these up now. So, 16, 20, 22. 3, 4, 5, 6. So my answer is 62 for this one here. Okay, so that's all the way through there, going from a hex value into a binary value and then doing a binary into finally a real value. So what we're going to look at next is the Kofi uses his computer to record an audio file of himself playing guitar. Kofi is emailing his recording to a record label. He uses Lossy Compression to produce the music file. Explain 2 reasons why Lossy Compression is beneficial. So with Lossy Compression, we know that the file is not identical to the original, so it's compressed, so it's not identical to the original. So because it's compressed, that means that we can actually send that file via email. So your first reason for why they would use lossy compression is actually really kind of focus on the compression aspect of it. So lossy compression is used to shrink the file size so it can be sent via email. Okay, so that would be your, your first piece of explained answer there. And then the second one here is that with lossy compression, you're reducing it to a point where the difference in quality isn't actually going to be that noticeable. So if you're looking at a music file, you're not particularly going to be able to hear the difference between this type of compression and the actual and the real thing, and the uncompressed version. So lossy compression is compressed in a way so that audio loss is not that noticeable. Obviously, if you're playing MP3 files on massive speakers and in stadiums and things like that, that's when it becomes lossy compression files. That's when they become more obvious that they've been compressed. Okay, so start outline what happens when the computer converts the music into a file. So this is all about you have your analog wave, which is like this. And what the actual work will do, the computer will do, is it will sample the wave at certain points. So what it means by sampling is that every 6 times a second or something like that, it'll take a point of the wave and it'll record just that sound. And it builds up its own version of the wave using blocks. Sort of like using data really, but which is represented here by these blocks. So what is actually measuring here is measuring the height of the wave, and then it's turning that into binary. So what you would say for this is a 2-mark question. So you would need to say first of all that the wavelength is sampled, because that's your keyword. So every one of these is a sample. The wavelength is sampled at regular intervals, and then that is turned into binary. Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward one. The wavelength gets sampled, regular intervals as we go along, that gets turned into binary, and that is how your computer converts an audio file, so a traditional analog sound, into a digital sound. Okay, the more of these samples it has, the higher the quality of the recording, but also the bigger the file size as well, so you have to remember that. So let's turn over now and look at the next one. So this is a pretty straightforward one here. The area of a circle is calculated by this. You need to identify 2 variables in the program. So they are pretty straightforward here. All you need to do is you need to look for the 2 things with the equal signs next to them. These 2 at the top here, these are going to be the 2 variables which you're going to be identifying. So this one here and this one here, you just need to write them in here. So it's int radius and real area. Easy one there, easy 2 marks. Order the following units from smallest to largest. So this one here, you have a variety of different units here. You need to put them in the right order. So you're going to be starting with a nibble, as that is 4 bits. No, you're not going to be starting with a nibble at all. You're going to be starting with 1. You're going to be starting with a bit, and then you're starting with next one is a nibble, because that's 4 bits. You're next looking at a byte, because that is 8 bits. Then you're looking at your megabyte, and then your gigabyte, and then your petabyte. Okay, so that is how those break down. In the actual exam, you'd write them down underneath. Okay, so fairly straightforward so far. Right, question 5. You're given a flowchart here. Obviously look through the flowchart first of all, make sure you understand it. This is for creating usernames. So what the flowchart is saying here is that it's going to take the input of the first name, input of the second name, surname, and then this name variable is going to start from the left, and it's going to be the first name, and it's going to be free. Now, because this is pseudocode, this doesn't really make sense in a Python kind of way, but it does make sense from the point of just looking at this. We know that name is going to contain, it's going to look at the first name, whatever you put in. It's going to look at 3 values in it, and it's going to start on the left hand side. So if your name is Adam, for example, it's going to start on the left hand side here, and it's going to take the first 3 values, 1, 2, 3, so ADA. Okay, similarly, if you look at the second one here, it's looking left, surname 2. So if your surname was Smith, okay, starting from the left hand side again, and it's looking at the S and the M. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward here. So it gives you a name to put through the flowchart. So the name you're putting through here is Rebecca Ellis. So Rebecca Ellis, we look at, it goes through first, so Rebecca is the first name, and we're looking at left the first 3 items. So R, E, B. Okay, and then that be it. And then we look at Ellis, so we go straight down here, and then because this is the surname part of it, we look at the left, and then it's the first 2 items in there. So we're looking at E, and then we're looking at L. Okay, so rebel basically. The next question, so that's only for 1 mark, so that's just to warm you up, so it starts you looking at the flowchart. The next question, let's just have a quick look here. So the next question, basically it wants you to, well, first of all, it's giving you an updated process here, and it's going to give you a new name as well. So if the person is, Johnny's updated the process used to create usernames as follows. If the person is male, then then the username is the last 3 letters of their surname and the first 3 letters of their first name. If the person is female, then their username is the first 3 letters of their first name and the first 2 letters of their surname. So it's basically giving you a condition in here now as well. What would the username be for Fred Biscuit using the updated process? So if we have a look here, this is a male, so it's the last 3 letters of their surname first of all, so the last 3 letters. So we are looking here at U-I-T, just make sure I don't capitalise that. I don't really think you'd get penalised for that too much, to be fair though. And the first 2 letters of their first name, so first name, F-O. Okay, just make sure. Yeah, U-I-T-F-R there. So that's just making you look at it in a slightly different way. You've had experience of it now, so you should be able to put this in the correct order. Write an algorithm for Johnny to output a username using the updated process. So this is a 6-mark question, and I'm going to show you where the marks actually come from. You firstly need to, your first mark is going to come from taking the first name, surname, and gender. So you need F name equals, you know, this is going to equal an input. S name, that's going to equal an input. And then gender, that is going to equal an input as well. Okay, so we have our 3 inputs. That's going to be your first mark. I now need to create a condition. So if gender equals male, so if the gender equals male, I need to do something here with the actual letters here. So I need to I use the last 3 letters of the surname. So the last 3 letters of the surname. So whereas if we look at the flowchart here, the first 3 letters were always left, so the last 3 letters are going to be right. We'll just stick to using their standard. So I'm going to, so let me just check how they did theirs. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So I would do right, and then in brackets, it's the last 3 letters. So it's going to be of their surname. So it's going to be surname, and then 3. So that takes me to the last 3 letters of their surname. And then I need to plus, so this is going to be the first 2 letters of their first name. So this is going to be left, because that gets me to the first two letters, F name, ooh, running out of space, and then 2. Okay, so that is how I would do the first condition there. So I actually get 2 marks for this. So my first mark comes from the if statement, and my second mark comes from correctly doing this condition underneath the male. I'm just going to do, we're going to do the else here. Okay, so then the else, so if they've put in female as a gender, we are going to do, look at the next bit here. So the female, the username is the first 3 letters of their first name, first 2 letters of their surname. So we are going to be just looking, oh, just one thing here. Although I've done this part here, I've not actually assigned it to a variable. So username equals that. And then again here, so username equals. And then for the female then, so it's left. And then it's going to be, sorry, F name. And it's the first 3 letters, so F name 3. I'm going to put that in there properly. F name plus left, and then S name, and then that is the first 2 letters. Okay, and then I just, well, it's ended now because it's an else or an if. And then the final thing to do here is to print the username. Okay, so I would do my my 4th mark comes from use of the plus signs, because that's your concatenation, where you combine 2 strings. So 2 marks there for correct use of that, and then my final mark, is that final mark? Yeah, final mark comes from printing the username. So that gets me 6 marks there. Okay, so remember, first of all, this is just like the one we did last time. First things first is always identifying the input, so identifying the variables. Once you've done that, identify any criteria that you need. Then what does the thing need to do once the criteria is either true or false? Does anything else need to happen? And then what's your final output? Okay, that's how you should try and break these things down. Okay, so I think we're almost at the end here, so we're going to be looking at the last 2 questions here, our bubble sorts. Right, now people get a little bit confused with these because they try and sort the whole thing in one row, and if you try and sort the whole thing in one row, then you're just writing the whole thing out correctly. So if you remember a bubble sort, it looks at the 2 items at a time and it compares them as they go. So, and it puts them in the correct order. So firstly, we would just rewrite out what they've got here. So fright, victory, nymph, loose. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do in a bubble sort, you would compare these 2. So those 2 would swap. So we write the whole thing out again. So bait, crime, fright. So basically you're doing 1 swap per line, basically. Okay, so does it say? No, it doesn't say to do it for a certain amount of time, so it wants you to sort the data until it's done. So then I'd look again at here. So bait and crime are fine. Crime and fright are fine. Victory, fright and victory are fine. Victory and nymph, they need to be swapped around. So bait, crime, fright, nymph, victory, loose. And then I would run this again. So if I look at this again, so now I've got victory. Yeah, so now I've got loose and victory basically, which needs to be put around the correct way. So bait, crime, fright, nymph, loose, and victory. Okay, and then finally, obviously, these two are going to need to be swapped around as well. So I'll just do it again. Bait, crime, fright. Oh, loose. Nymph. And then victory. Okay, and then by showing that, because you're showing the 4 different changes. Neville. Because you're showing the 4 different changes, you are you're getting your 4 marks there. Okay. Sorry, that's Neville getting in the way. So there's my 4 marks. Okay, so the next one here, show the stages of a binary search to find the word zebra when applied to the data shown in Fig 4. So a binary search looks for the middle item, and then it splits right or left depending on what it's found, basically. So what it would look at, first of all, the variable it's looking for here is zebra. Okay, it would compare this to the midpoint, so it starts off by comparing to orange. So we compare to orange. Okay, zebra is greater than orange because it comes later on, so it's got a greater value. So we split from orange to zebra, basically. So we split to the right. Okay, so it's greater, split right. Okay, so now the only thing I have, basically I have this amount of data to look at. So I now look again at the middle item. So this is tenth. So I now compare to tenth. Okay, my item is still greater than tenth because zebra is later on in the alphabet. Sorry, Z is later on in the alphabet than T. So it's greater. So again, I split right. Okay, so I'm now left with a much smaller list. I'm just literally left with these 2 now. So I'm going to start off by comparing to wind. So I compare to wind, and again it's greater. So I split right, and my final thing is I compare to zebra, because that's the only thing left now. Compare to zebra, and that's it. And then I found what I need to do. 4 marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is it. Okay. So I hope you got a lot out of that today. Just go through key points when you're looking at a piece of pseudocode like this. Okay. I said it earlier, but I really must emphasize the best way for you to get all the marks on here. Identify the variables first of all, okay? Must identify the variables first of all. You'll always get a mark for identifying the variables, okay? Next thing you need to do is you need to identify, is there a criteria? So is there a check in there, okay? Your criteria checks, they are gonna get you your second mark, okay? So your if statements, your while loop, okay? Your criteria checks there, they're gonna get you your second marks. What happens after the criteria check is true or false, that will get you your third mark, third and fourth mark, or third, fourth and fifth mark in some cases. And finally your output is going to get you your 6th mark. So say for example, looking at it, you know the variables, you know the output, and you know the criteria checks, but you're not sure what to put in here. That's 3 marks. That's 3 marks you can get just from the question alone. Okay, so think about that, make sure you are aware of how to do that. Make sure you know what you're doing with that, and make sure you do all of your homework over the Easter break, because if you don't, then you will be in trouble. Okay, enjoy your Easter.